When we're solving an equation, we're trying to figure out what x is equal to. And it doesn't matter what kind of numbers you have in that equation, if they're whole numbers, or if they're fractions, or if they're decimals like this. The general process is exactly the same. We have 1.4x minus 2.33 equals 0.89. Now your teacher might have you change that to plus a negative 2.33, but regardless, we go through this process the same. We add positive 2.33 to both sides, plus 2.33 there, and I get 1.4x equals 0.89, 0.89 plus 2.33, positive 0.89 plus 2.33, 3.22, there we go. Then I divide both sides by 1.4, divided by 1.4, and I get x equals 3.22 divided by 1.4, 2.3. Feel free to use your calculator on these. I certainly am. I'm not going to be able to divide 3.22 divided by 1.4. If you can, hey, good for you. But if not, don't worry about it. Use a calculator. And also, once you get to the answer right here, it's okay in this case to leave this as a decimal. A lot of the time, your teacher will tell you to never write your answer as a decimal. This is the one exception, because the numbers you were given originally were decimals. If you start off with decimals, it's fine to leave your answer as a decimal. You certainly could convert that to a fraction if you wanted to, but it's also totally okay to leave it as a decimal like that. If you start with fractions, then you should have a fraction as your answer. If you start with whole numbers, then, well, remember, whole numbers can be written as fractions, so again, you should leave an answer as a fraction if that's necessary. But there are other ways that we can go about doing these. If we have a more complicated problem like this, and let's say decimals aren't really your thing, they kind of freak you out a little bit, that's fine. We can actually make these a little bit more reasonable to work with, at least to get rid of the decimals. And it's to multiply everything by a 10. So to clear a decimal, multiply by a power of 10. By a power of 10. I want to get these to be whole numbers. They're decimals right now. So I think, what can I multiply each of these by to get a whole number? Well, I need to move the decimal over twice in order to get that. Multiplying it by 10 will only move it once. 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about here. So I need to multiply each of these by 100, because they both have two decimal places, and both of these by 100 for the same reason. Incidentally, in the previous example, I would also have to do 100. Everything by 100. That's the important point, because even though I only need to multiply this one by 10, the 1.4, all I need to do is multiply that by 10 to get a whole number. I can't just multiply one piece of something by one thing, and then the rest by something else. It has to be the same. We have to keep the equations balanced. So if I do that, I end up with 345x minus 973 equals 845x plus 527. Now these end up being really big numbers. Maybe that is worse, but ultimately we go about it the same way. Plus 973 plus 973. I get 345x is equal to 845x. 527 plus 973 is 1500 exactly, plus 1500. Then I can minus the 845x from both sides. Generally, I do try to avoid getting negatives anywhere, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Scroll down a little bit. And I get negative 500x equals positive 1500. We can see that this is going to work out pretty nicely. Divide by negative 500, divide by negative 500, and we get x equals negative 3. Easy peasy. We could take that negative 3 and plug it back into the original equation, do 3.45 times negative 3 minus 9.73, and then do 8.45 times negative 3 plus 5.27 to check to make sure that they balance out. And you should do that. There's a few questions on the homework where you need to check. So make sure that you pay attention to when you're supposed to check, and make sure that you do that.